When the people ask me about the origin of my vocation, my answer, ordinary answer, that I didn't choose, I was chosen. Because in my vocation there is not, from the very beginning, a very clear understanding what I wanted to be and why I wanted to be a Claretian. I became a Claretian, first of all, because I had a cousin of mine in the minor seminary in Cervera. And his mother was my godmother and brought me to visit him. I found the place very interesting, and I really decided to join also. I was not offered to go to the seminary of Cervera. I joined it happily. And my first experience was a very good one. I arrived on summertime with many activities, and I feel at home since the very beginning. I was born in Artés, is a village near Sallent, very close. And when our father founder were canonized in, I think, 1960 or 50, I attended the celebration that took place in Fusimaña with my family. I was at that time 5 years old, but I didn't know who Claret was. Later on, I knew. It was maybe a coincidence, but it's something that in many ways that influenced in my vocation. Also because in my village, there's some Claretian priests, especially one of them, the one who facilitated my entrance to the minor seminary in Cervera. Later on, I was in formation for 16 years. I was ordained when I was 26 years old. Therefore, it means that I grew in the congregation. It's all the influence I have in my life. My vocation to Japan also, it is something I didn't decide. Although I feel an attraction when we were, especially during philosophy years, some missionaries from Japan came to the Catalonia province and explained, shared with us their experience, missionary experience in Japan. I feel very attracted because one of my aspirations since I was a boy, it was to know the world, to go far away, to visit very far places. That's why I feel attracted to Japan, because it's so different country and so far away. But later on, I was not thinking about this possibility, especially in the general chapter when it was decided that each province, the big provinces, took in charge of some mission. I excluded Japan because I wanted to be a missionary, but in the mission that the Catalonia province will choose or will accept. But later on, when I was studied in Rome, at the end of my theology there in Rome, the Claretianum, Father Viñas proposed me or asked me to go to Japan, because at that time there was a lack of Claretian missionaries. After the Second Vatican Council, many left the congregation. And there, that's why the general government wanted the province of Catalonia that accept the mission of Japan. But in the province of Catalonia, there were many people who were opposed to it because there were not very young, vocations, and not many personnel, and therefore to accept Japan as the mission of the province, it means that you have to send people who have to learn the language from the very beginning. Not everybody can go there, and therefore there was a kind of opposition for this. When I was proposed, I told Father Viñas, please let me think about. I was thinking for 1 year, was one of my also not the same batch, student who was proposed, but also he left the congregation before become ordained priest, although he was decided to go to Japan. I was wondering, but at the end, I accepted it when I made the decision, before my ordination. At that time, many of my companions have left the congregation, and I was alone. And I had, I have to decide in front of God. And then I think, I think I am a missionary. Now I am needed in Japan. I will go to Japan. It was a decision to become a priest, at the same time to become a missionary, to work in Japan. At that time there were a few members in Japan that were from Catalonia. And when I arrived to Japan, I found already that some companions that were working them. And for me, it was easy to adapt. For me, the language and the culture was not a problem. I was really very interested in learning, so the language, I enjoy it. But my problem was what I could be able to do as a missionary. When I arrived to Japan, I feel disappointed at the situation of the church in Japan. After the Second Vatican Council, everything have changed. In Europe, especially in my province there in Catalonia, it's a new church. But when I arrived to Japan, it was the church before the Second Vatican Council, very conservative. But at the beginning, for me, it was difficult, or disappointed to see that, what kind of church, what can I do this? Still, the church is in this, in this situation. But one of the things I realized that, Japan, they have not a Catholic tradition, as a Christianity, and therefore for them it's not easy to adapt, to change. They are really very faithful to the faith that they received from the first missionaries. The first one was St. Francis Xavier. But I realized, I think it is very important for me to accept, to understand this situation and to do it, to walk together in this process. And later on, really, in the Church of Japan, it took a very important process of renewal according to the Second Vatican Council. And I would say I was privileged to be able to participate in it. But my first impression was one of disappointing for me. What can I do here as a missionary? What I can bring here to the Japanese people that be really meaningful for them. That's why, since the very beginning, I tried to present the gospel, the message of Jesus, in a way that people could understand me. Not only the Catholics, but also the ordinary people. That's why I had to change my theology, that the way that I presented it to the people, and also the way I live it. One of my experience here in Japan, that for me it was a great discovery, it was the importance of awareness, the Oriental tradition, the importance of awareness. I discovered it, the importance in my life, and also in the way to live my Christian experience, my faith, according to this process of deepening awareness. And for me it has been a privilege, especially working in Japan and being a formator for many years, to be able to go around to different countries of Asia, to share also my experience of prayer, that in some way also was to share this experience I had there in Japan in relation how to live and how to pray from the perspective of our capacity of awareness. I was appointed superior of the delegation after Father Abella was elected to the general government. and he left everything. I have to to put myself in his shoes. It was a difficult situation for me because I have nobody who could accompany me because he was already in Rome. But for me it was very challenging. At that time, as I say at the beginning, it was only the Korea part of the delegation. Later on it became independent, but we had to accompany them in many aspects. It was for me also very enriching, but not always easy, this kind of accompaniment. Okay, later on, the general government decided, in the general chapter, decided to establish a foundation in Taiwan, thinking of the mainland China, of our mission in the future in China. At the time, I was the superior delegate, and then I went to Taiwan, at the time also with Father Felix, to talk with the Archbishop of Taipei about this possibility, how to start a mission there. Then, that we find many people there who cooperated, especially sisters that I knew or we knew, and that helped us very much. Then later on, new people was assigned to Taiwan. I had to accompany them. And in this process, our intention was the mission in China, how to establish this contact. It was some way providential that we could establish a contact with those who had been the catechists of our missionaries in China. It was especially through Father Mario Bonfaini, and it was a kind of link again, the congregation of our mission in China. Later on, personally, I had the possibility to go there to share my experience with the Center of Formation for Sisters. I went there 6 times, that they give to this course on prayer to the sisters, thanks to Sister Clara who translated for me. But it was a very interesting experience because at the beginning, our first try was in relation to Harbin, the possibility to establish there an academy of languages, because they were the ones asking us to go there. But it was, when it was discerned, it was considered too early, because still China was at the beginning opening up. And later on, it will become more difficult to go there. It was the ones from Korea that sent some missionaries to the diocese of Harbin, stay for several years, but it was given up because it was really very, very difficult. In Japan, I have been working in different places. Also, I started in parishes, but my main work in Japan has been as a formator. And when I was appointed to the superior delegate, I was already a formator. And when I finished, that I continue my task as a formator. And therefore, in part, also as a superior delegate, for my main concern was to accompany the people, as missionaries, to grow, and as individual level, but also as a community. It's not always easy, because the members, or the missionaries that at your disposition as superior are very limited, and sometimes it's difficult to combine, especially assignments for this. It was not very easy, but also very challenging task. At the beginning, it only was Japan, afterwards Korea, but afterwards Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, no? Bueno, Macau, no? The next step was Macau. It was initiative from the Philippines province, but was also that decided that will belong to the East Asia Delegation. And therefore, okay, it means it is a lot of variety, language, culture, situations. It's not easy. I think I was trying to listen to the people, to the situation, but not always I could really maybe, I'd say, be attuned on the situation of each country. There are many difficulties, but my experience was a wonderful one in the sense that I found really the people were very cooperative. That's why now when the superior delegate asks me something, I cannot refuse it because many people really help me in this task. It's not an easy one because of the variety, but at the same time, a very enriching one. I think that our mission here in East Asia is a very challenging for the whole congregation, a very important one. Because nowadays, especially in our world, is intercultural world. We cannot work isolated, apart from others. We need to work together. But for this, we need to be open. We need to learn to overcome sometimes our limitations, way of thinking, our culture, and therefore it means it demands from us really a big attitude of openness, capacity of adaptation. For me, it has been one of most enriching experiences is to discover the difference, all these aspects of the experience to being a missionary in Asia. It has been very enriching, but at the same time very demanding. Still it is. Okay, when people tell me, already you can speak well in Japanese, I answer, I only can manage. I don't master it, I only can manage. But I think it is also, can be applied to all the aspects, to the culture, to our mission. We share with limitations. It is enriching for us, but it's enriching for others when we do it in an attitude of openness, an attitude of listening, an attitude of walking together.